Welcome to the Art to Income podcast from Musicians Council. Here you will meet the experts from Musicians Council and you will learn to navigate the modern music industry. Today's guest is a face you may not recognize right now, but if you watch television, his music is in your face all the time. He's a guitarist, he's a songwriter, he's a composer. He's the author of The 4-Step Plan to Licensing Success. And I personally think that he's the poster child for Art to Income because he's a master at earning money with music. Michael Elsner.
Thanks, Doug. That was awesome.
My pleasure. It's well-deserved, my friend, well-deserved. I'm so happy to have you on. And first I want to just start by saying you and I go back not at all. We actually run in parallel for years. I mean, probably 15 years. It was amazing when we met through Musicians Council that our lives have really been running in parallel almost consistently for well over a decade. And yet we never ran across each other at all.
I know, it's not really weird. It's actually been I think we've been running parallel for 15 years.
15 years. And I mean, when I say parallel, I mean with the same clients and the same shows and so many of the same things that it's
exactly
fascinating. So let's start off. Tell me just about, let's go pre-television music world, pre all of that success. Let's just start with your musical background. Where did everything start out for you? How did you get into music?
I just got into music because, I think I was 12. I think I was 12 years old. I wanted to start learning how to play guitar. And so I got a guitar for Christmas one year. And I just dove into it head first. I was in 8th grade. So however old you are in 8th grade. So it was, Christmas of 8th grade, I got a guitar. And, when I got into high school, I started playing with a bunch of guys and, started playing in some bands and getting together at a drummer's house and, jamming and starting to learn how to write music and songs and, played a lot of cover songs for a while. And then when I was 16 years old, I asked my parents for a 4-track, an old Tascam 4-track for my birthday so I could start recording my songs. And, it really just started there. I was a super nerdy guitar player. I studied, all the shred guys, and that's how I learned. I learned from, watching the videos of, Paul Gilbert and Richie Kotzen and Reb Beach and Marty Friedman, and those old, REH videos. REH was the company that used to release these instructional videos with these famous guitar players. And that's how I learned. And, then as I got into my later teens, I started, I played in a band for a number of years that kind of became like a big fish in a small pond in the area that we were in. And, finally made our way into a studio and, recorded an album. And, that fascinated me. After that, I started spending some time hanging out in some of the studios, the local studios, and spending time with the different engineers that I would meet through that. And, really, I was just on the path of writing songs. I felt that, at that time, I thought that the only outlet for having my songs heard by a lot of people was to play in a band and have a song out on the radio. I'd get a record deal, have videos on MTV, and so that was the initial goal. We did that band for a number of years, around about 4 years or so. And in 1998, it was time to leave. We took that as far as it could go. And I moved to Nashville. And I moved to Nashville with the goal of just continuing that process. I wanted to tour. I wanted to play with some artists and play guitar and tour. But I never wanted to just be a side guy because I was always interested in writing my own songs and, getting my own music out there, but I was never a front person. I was never the lead singer. So I always needed to do that with other singers or in the vehicle being a band or, working with other artists and writing songs with them. And of course, I was really into production, and learning my way around the studio. So that's really my background. I didn't go to school for music. I always wish I went to school and learned the theory behind things, but I just learned as I went.
It's amazing and interesting because that path of being in a band and getting in the studio, and that awe factor of, for me, when that happened, I felt like, oh, this is home. I finally found what home feels like. It's all this stuff. And you didn't even really know about that when you're starting and you're learning to play your instrument and doing all that. And then you see it and you go, wow, this is it. But I think the real strength to all that comes as you developed a career, the ability to do all of those things, to have that fascination for production and engineering. Those are all the things, and we'll get into that, how critical those things are to being a self-sufficient person and being able to deliver music quickly. But before we go there, so I'll ask you this question in kind of a strange way, but I think you'll understand it. How did the world of television discover you?
By accident.
Exactly. How? Tell me.
Oh gosh. Well, the world of the world of television discovered me completely by accident, because I spent 4.5 years in Nashville from the end of 1998 to the beginning of 2003, struggling and, getting turned down. Every publisher was, saying no to my songs, and, I'd go back to the drawing board and I do these full production recordings of them. And I just, was pouring my heart and soul into it. And then finally I'd had enough. I'd had enough of being turned down and struggling. And I thought, you know what, if I'm going to struggle, I'm going to at least struggle where there's an ocean. So one day I just had enough of Nashville and I drove out to Los Angeles. And realistically within about 2 months, I'm not sure when it was, like 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, something like that, I got a gig playing guitar on a TV show. And it was through a bunch of people that I had just met. And the composer, he lived up in Malibu, and I spent some time at his house playing guitar on this particular show as a daytime soap opera. And then it was through that I just watched the process of writing for music and how fast it was and how creative it was. And one song would be like this funk song, and then the very next song that he'd be working on an hour later would be a pop song, and then the very next thing would be like this like romantic jazzy song. And it was like, man, in one day, the amount of musical genres that this guy is writing and that I'm getting to play on is incredible. And then on top of that, the fact that then I could call my friends and my family back home and be like, hey, watch this show, in 3 weeks, and I'm going to be playing guitar on it. And it was through that situation that I started meeting these people called music supervisors. This is 2003, so I didn't know who they were. And one of them in particular, who her name was Wendy. I gave her a CD one time. I said, can I bring you some songs tomorrow? And she said, sure. And I brought her some songs, and I think about 2 weeks later, she had placed one of them as a featured vocal placement on Cold Case, which was a popular CBS show at the time. Yep. And that's how it happened.
Yes. And I will say, let's give a shout out to Wendy Crowley, because she's was an awesome music supervisor, did an amazing job on Cold Case. And I think now she's like senior vice president of Sony Music Publishing, the TV and film division out in LA now. So she went into Sony and is working there now, but she was just one of the really good people who said, hey, you're amazing, do it for me. It wasn't a game with her. And that was, I think, something that I also felt and discovered around that same time when I was started interfacing with music supervisors was, wow, it was a different time. I mean, let's talk about those early days for a minute, because it was a really different time. I think people are probably listening to this discussion right now through the lens of sync placements and licensing music in 2019. Yeah. And that is like
night and day.
I mean, forget it. We're talking like, this was like the Mad Max days. It was like Blade Runner.
Yeah.
It was like, 10 of us in a spaceship just rolling over the barren land.
Well, the thing is, now you can at least send your audio files with metadata for free. And actually, it's funny because that you bring this up. Just so happens that for whatever reason, I actually found this in my garage. It's an old CD. It's a copy of an old CD that I used to send out to music supervisors. And for those who are listening who can't see on unfortunately, you're not going to be able to see the goodness here that I'm going to show you, Doug. But this is the old disc that I used to send out. I don't know if you can see it or not, but
Okay.
I have like all the masters, and I have like
Yeah,
in
the
the
little bit.
style of.
Right.
Then on the back, I have like owner of master and secrets. I think it's probably coming. It's probably not showing right, but it like all like my metadata actually on the actual disc, like
Yeah.
actually on the printout of it. I think I can angle it that way. You
That's
can
better.
see it
Yeah.
like
Yeah, and you were
and
probably one of the few people that was smart enough to do it, which also really helped because people
well,
used to go, "What is wrong with you people? You don't even write on the, you don't even put your information."
yeah. Well, I remember the very first time. I remember like one time, like probably the second or third time that I gave Wendy a CD. I gave her something like this, and I remember her looking at it, going like, "This is perfect. Oh, this is exactly what we need. I wish everyone delivered music like this." And I thought, well, now I've hit on something very interesting, and I hit on something that I judged by her reaction made her job a lot easier, right? And at that point, I made the decision. I was like, every time I deliver my music to someone, I'm gonna make it bulletproof. I'm gonna make it as easy as possible for
Right.
them to they don't even have to listen to this CD. They can just look at it and tell, by the way, I've printed everything out on the back exactly like what's on it. I have track styles, female pop, tracks 2, 4, 6, 9, 10, 16. And then I have like the track tempo, fast, medium, and slow. So, okay, I need a fast female pop song. Well, that's going to be track number 6 and track number 9.
Right.
Then they can put it in and listen to it. This is before audio files were being sent.
Sure. Oh yeah, I mean, they existed, but we weren't really using them yet. It was all CD based.
No.
Now,
And then you'd spend a lot of money,
yeah.
going to the post office with these manila envelopes, these padded manila envelopes full of CDs.
Well, at the time, I mean, most music that was used in television shows came from record companies, right? I mean, this is before the era of the flood of independent music, but it was post the era of Napster. So my sort of analysis as I think back to this time is this was a very interesting in-between period where licensed music got very expensive because record sales had dropped like the Hindenburg, just boom. And so labels really needed to up licensing rates in order to survive. There wasn't even the beginning of a path to out of hell for the record labels yet with digital content. So they hadn't even started to tackle that yet. So it was just, well, let's just crank up our licensing fees and try to survive.
Right.
So I think though that opened some doors for people like you. And what were you seeing back then because of that?
Oh my, a world of opportunity. As a writer, it was so refreshing to be able to have, when I lived in Nashville, and I live in Nashville now. I moved back a number of years ago, but I don't work out of Nashville. All my work is still based out of Los Angeles. But I have a theory in the 2 times that I lived in Nashville and my experience here that Nashville's favorite word is no. Nashville's a fear-based music town, to be quite honest with you. People make decisions completely based on fear, and the usual answer is no. California, Los Angeles was the complete opposite. That was a industry that they were always willing to take a chance. I felt on the new guy. Anytime I was introduced to someone new or I met someone new, they were excited to hear what I could use, and then what I could deliver to them, and then they were excited to try and use what I could deliver to them. And so instead of this fear-based mentality, which is based on like scarcity or not a lot of opportunity, the thing for me at the time was I was surrounded by abundance. It was always like, man, anything you can do, send us some stuff. Would love to hear. I'd love to see if I can get some of your stuff used on what I'm working on. There's so much opportunity. Just keep bringing us some stuff. That was the difference. And so it was a night and day experience, because literally the doors were swinging wide open. Every person I met, every opportunity that presented itself, or really every like industry event that I went to and I meet some people, there was always opportunities that was coming out of it.
Yeah, but let's also acknowledge for those who are new to this that
Yeah.
we are talking about two different industries right now too.
We are talking about
We are talking about two different industries.
This
We
is the
are talking
TV
about
industry.
Nashville is really the record industry,
Yes.
as was New York, where I had come from before
Right.
Los Angeles. You came from Nashville before Los Angeles. I came from New York before Los Angeles, but I think we both came from the record industry,
We
because
did.
I didn't even know that. I barely even ever watched television. I mean, I said to somebody the other day, I in 2000 or whatever it was when I started making music for television, probably was the least qualified human being to make music for television. I don't think I had turned on a television in 10 years.
Wow.
And all of a sudden I was making music for television. I literally was, I missed a decade of television shows just because I was in the studio making records, and I just didn't, none of that, I didn't even think about the word television. All of a sudden I moved to Los Angeles having no idea that there's a television industry there, because it's Hollywood, of course there was, but not thinking that. And all of a sudden it was like sucked in by this television industry, but it's a different business.
It is a different business, and I'm glad you pointed that out. My perspective of it though is when you're in Nashville or you're in New York or maybe even Atlanta or wherever you are, you're in the music industry, and as you've said, like the licensing world is a TV industry. But I was looking at it from the perspective of a musician and as a songwriter, right? And as a musician, as a songwriter, to walk into a situation where people are welcoming you and there's lots of yeses because there's a lot of opportunity. It's a completely different world than the record world, where a lot of the decisions that they make are based on fear, and especially as the industry had changed so much, right?
Yeah, I
with
agree.
Napster and all that stuff, as you said earlier.
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, honestly. I had never thought about it that way, but I couldn't agree with you more. And it was a lot of that. So, okay. So now let's just compare that quickly to the world of, dealing with music supervisors. Now, obviously it's almost the polar opposite. Now we're flooded with independent music. We're flooded with people trying to send music supervisors music. We're flooded with people making music with no budget at all. It's not like you have to write and build a catalog and bust your butt to save money to be able to go and get into a studio with a great producer. Now you produce these songs and all of a sudden you go, God, I have these great songs. They would be great on television. People are just cranking out music every day, winging it, just wanting to get it into anything they can get it into. And there's a flood of music. And I'm not saying everybody does that at all. There's obviously so much really brilliant music coming out and so much creativity and so much care going into a lot of music, but there's also a lot of people just slamming music out. There's also people who work in television who realize that there's a lot of money to be made, who just would rather just use loops and use sort of prepackaged music and just collect royalties. And that's also another part of it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that there's even now some apps or some websites where computers can completely write a piece of music itself. I saw a blog about that recently, like artificial intelligence music. But the reality is that, when you're writing music for TV, your job is to help convey the emotion. You're helping tell the story that the director and the producer are putting onto film, right, in the video. And I just don't think that taking different loops, maybe if you're like doing background music for like an HGTV show, and it's just background music while they're hammering away, that's one thing. But you will never be able to replace the actual human emotion that goes into playing real instruments and singing real songs to actually convey the emotion that's happening in the actual scene.
Well, let's tie this up right here, because I want to come back with you and I want to talk about that exact subject next, which is the brain. So we'll come back and we'll do another segment with Michael Elsner. Thanks, Michael.
Awesome, thanks.